Hello, this presentation is about the research I have done into how pupils, many of whom experience and engage in bullying, can be repositioned to become active agents who combat bullying in their school. I am Dr. Elizabeth Nassem, a researcher in school bullying and lecturer at Leeds Trinity University. This presentation is based on my EdD, in which I examined where does bullying exist in children's everyday experiences of school. It is also based on the postdoctoral research I have done and where I developed pupil-led interventions. The methods used include observations, focus groups, interviews, and diaries, which were given to children. It is also informed by the consultancy work I have done, where I've developed strategies to help schools understand and resolve bullying, and also my teaching experience in school. The way I conceptualised bullying was as a spectrum of maltreatment, which ranges from mild to severe, and there are grey areas such as teasing, which need to be analysed. Part of this definition involved characteristics of bullying, such as ostracism and being shouted at, and also took into account perceptions and experiences. Different modalities of bullying have been examined, such as between pupils, pupils and teachers, and systemic bullying. Systemic bullying refers to institutional structures of school, such as punitive disciplinary methods, and societal inequalities, such as in social class and gender, which can target certain children and marginalise them and cause them distress. For example, children in the bottom set who feel distressed because they are perceived as being thick. I drew on Foucault's work to theorise power, which allowed an examination into the nuances in power relationships. For Foucault, power makes us all subjects, but we can all exercise power to some extent, and there's fluidity within how power is exercised. And power is never in anyone's hands, although there are inequalities in power relations, such as in social class, where certain groups are dominated. Normalization operates through creating hierarchies and divisions between pupils, for example, through assessment. Pupils who do not conform to the academic standards expected of them can become marginalized and punished. Through surveillance, although all individuals are observed, those who do not conform to norms are supervised, scrutinized, and targeted. However, all individuals can exercise and resist power in multiple ways, but this depends upon how much power operates over individuals. Here is my definition of bullying. This is a multifaceted definition of school bullying. It takes into account the different severities of bullying, how power and resistance, characteristics and forms of bullying, different modalities, the perceptions and feelings individuals have, and the negative experiences. So, how do children perceive their involvement in school bullying? Now, in my research, even though I've interviewed over 100 children, none of the children referred to themselves as bullies. Bullying was considered as normalised. Bullying was perceived as, well, everyone does it, and they couldn't imagine school without it. And children felt coerced to victimise vulnerable children. And those who were certainly punished for bullying were children who had learning difficulties, working class males. And this contributed to conflict and hostility between teachers and pupils. Now, pupils who were bullied felt that they couldn't stop the bullying, and this created a sense of entrapment and hopelessness. But the perception of how the school handled bullying was using ineffective and passive approaches in school, such as posters, telling children not to engage in cyberbullying and assemblies. But children didn't necessarily know what was written on the posters or particularly engage in the assemblies. Now, bullying was constructed as being out there, external. Look at all those things that awful people do and these awful experiences people have, but not constructed as something that's internal and within us, experienced by us, and also that individuals and that we ourselves can subject other people to. But children who were labelled as bullies were usually those marginalised pupils. But a lot of children engaged in bullying to be popular, and this was the most common reason children engaged in bullying. And these popular children were perceived as admired and respected by their peers and favoured by their teachers. So when I've designed and developed interventions, one of the key principles I've had is for children to see themselves in the picture and to think, how can we get children actively involved in dealing with their bullying whilst placing their own behaviour in the frame? And the focus is on children's own experiences. So the bullying which involves me, and the importance of discussing and reflecting experiences, and the emphasis on lived events which are usually recent, for example, events that have happened yesterday, but some significant events that have been recalled might have been something that happened a year ago which left a mental scar, and these events were discussed and analysed and dealt with. And one way that this was done was through role play, where we role played events that had happened where there'd been conflict, and children took on the role of the other person, for example, the other person who they'd upset or who'd been upset by them. And this enabled children to really understand the perspectives of others, and for power to be exercised through being educated and through also educating other people. A mentoring programme I developed for bullies was for pupils who were identified as bullies by their teacher. And these children were usually put in isolation, mostly males with learning difficulties from economically deprived backgrounds. I provided one-to-one mentoring, but also mentoring in groups. One-to-one enabled more of an individualised approach, whereas in groups we could discuss and challenge norms. Often these children felt their teachers and school was against them, and they felt trapped. For example, they might have a week of detentions. So one idea was to not go to school, but then they were worried that they would have even more detentions mounting up. So a question is, how can we get children to learn how to break the cycle? How can we encourage children to take a different path and not follow the traditional trajectory expected of them, for example, of being excluded from school, and helping children identify and formulate tactics to stop being targeted by their pupils and or teachers. And the focus is on understanding the conflict, the people involved and the relationships and history around that. And through mentoring, I did role play on a weekly basis each time I met with mentees. And this was to discuss and reflect on conflicts and also to practice alternative responses. So the pupil-led group work focused on understanding children's personal experiences. And to do this, I interviewed individuals about their experiences. I also facilitated a focus group with staff, and then had focus groups with pupils and staff to develop an intervention. And this involved peers working together to understand the norms and challenge the norms which enable bullying. And also discuss and develop responses to conflict. So some of this involved problem solving. For example, a boy who was ostracised, thinking, what can we do to help him? What can we do to include him? But at the beginning of this work, this boy was actually constructed as a bully and also as a victim, but as a bully who they felt had wronged them. And the conversation changed to actually looking at how they could help and how they could include this child. So I also gave children diaries as an emotional outlet. And we also had targets for how to improve behaviour, what the children wanted to do next to improve their own behaviour in relation to bullying. And this was about including children who engaged in bullying, and also children with learning difficulties contributed and were part of this pupil-led group work. Some of the outputs were having a pupil-led assembly and having a meeting with staff and pupils to discuss what had been done through the anti-bullying work and how it could be developed and moved forward. So where were the challenges? Now, first of all, let's focus on the changes. Now, the evaluation, it was found that when I examined how children perceived their own changes in themselves, changes in their peers, the information that was generated from interviewing teachers and speaking with school leaders about changes and observing children over time, and also analysed children's diaries to find out if there were any changes in how children were thinking. These examples were used to evaluate the project. It was found that change takes time and children relapse, but also the emphasis was on having power through connectedness with others. So instead of children engaging power through dominating others, it was about through feeling connected and helping others. And pupils actually asked to have mediation between the pupil or teacher who would upset them, and children started to change the way they thought and show personal growth and development. And this is emphasised in the new Ofsted inspection framework. Children started to speak up more and articulate their power through voice. They were responding respectfully rather than aggressively, and sticking up for those who were victimised, for example, writing letters. And they said they were going to take their learning from primary school into secondary school. And the emphasis was on children making informed choices about their behaviour. For example, a child who was close to being excluded, I gave him an interview transcript of a child I interviewed who was in a similar position to him, who'd been permanently excluded. And we analysed what had happened and what could have been done to prevent this. The limitations and areas of development were children's position in the school. When I brought pupils to meet with staff, pupils felt that the staff weren't listening to them. And that was difficult because on one hand, children were learning how to exercise and articulate the voice. On the other hand, they felt that they weren't listened to. And the teachers emphasised that it was the pupils who needed to change and not them. So that might have had a negative impact on how much the pupils could change and the level of examples shown to children. And also, was there going to be a relapse when I finally stopped working in the school? How can pupil voice be genuinely embedded into school policies and practices so they're listened to and responded to? One idea is to have an advisory group on bullying for schools to meet regularly with pupils and staff to discuss cases of bullying, particularly complex cases, and find resolutions. And to have a system of dialogue, a way of having dialogue with pupils rather than just punitive approaches. And one recommendation which several pupils have suggested is for each school to have an individual who deals specifically with bullying, where they can go to them whenever they need it. Another question is, could a mentoring programme be used as a more productive alternative to traditional methods of punishment? To try to make changes more broadly, I've published my research in the Teacher's Guide to Resolving School Bullying. I've also disseminated my work to the media, had several meetings with DFE senior officials, and been an invited expert for the Ofsted policy team. I also embed my research and strategies of school bullying into my teaching. Thank you, which is at university. Thank you for listening, and I am happy to answer any questions. Here are my references.
Hi everybody, we're from the Diana Award. My name is Paul Hanmore. I am the Anti-Bullying Training Manager for the charity managing our anti-bullying intervention programmes.
Hi, I'm Susanna O'Brien. I am the Senior Impact and Evaluation Coordinator, looking after research and evaluation on the team. And we're going to be talking to you about our peer-led approach to tackling bullying behaviour. So, Paul, can you tell us about the Anti-Bullying Ambassador Programme, why it exists and what it aims to do?
Absolutely, my pleasure, Susanna. So the training has been going for 10 years, so a good amount of time. So since 2011, it was set up as kind of a legacy, really, kind of a bit like Princess Diana's legacy, but through our own charitable work, from Alex Holmes, who, as a young person, he took a youth-led initiative whilst he was at school as a result of experiencing significant bullying behaviours. So with this programme, this has been put in place to give educational establishments in the UK and beyond much needed support, guidance and training in building youth-led social action initiatives that aim to tackle the issue of bullying behaviour in schools. So it's motivating people into that side of social action to make the difference in their schools and communities.
Exactly, and the programme is really rooted in research around bullying behaviour that suggests that bullying behaviour is a dynamic, particularly amongst peers. And so if the behaviour is kind of peer-to-peer, then the solution can be rooted in that kind of peer-led approach as well, and young people being much more able to talk freely amongst each other as opposed to kind of maybe teachers and parents, and are able to kind of model positive behaviours amongst themselves. So, Paul, what exactly does our programme involve?
Oh my goodness, what does it not involve? About involving everybody in the communities as well. So the programme aims to equip young people with the skills and confidence to tackle bullying behaviours in schools through a full-day training session with one of our training team. Quite recently, obviously, with COVID, has an impact on all the work that we've been doing. So it did have an impact on how we delivered. So we did adapt our training to be online 3-hour sessions for schools, still to give the young people the opportunity to receive that training. With this, young people are given key knowledge on identifying bullying behaviours and understanding how to address any form of bullying behaviour in a safe manner, so they're not putting themselves in a vulnerable position. This role encompasses a wide range of positive peer-led behaviours, from supporting someone who's experiencing that bullying behaviour to knowing how to report that bullying behaviour witnessed in school or even online, to spreading an anti-bullying message to the whole school community, so adopting and taking that whole school approach moving forward. Young people are also guided in constructing their own campaign for issues that are important to them. That is a key part of the training programme. Equipping with skills and knowledge, absolutely, but motivating them so they take that ownership. It's very youth driven. They are in control of how that's kind of addressed moving forward and how they can take that into their schools or wider communities moving forward as well. But it doesn't just stop there. So part of our commitment as well is to provide young people with further opportunities. So a few years ago, we adopted something called the upskill training, which is like a level 2, if you will, which gives young people extra skills, extra confidence to take their campaigns to the next level, which we are very excited to be running again this term now the pandemic has slowly eased off.
Amazing. And obviously, Paul, once they've done with their training day with you and they've done upskill training potentially, the support continues through our aftercare team. They provide ongoing support for schools, regular check-ins, lots of kind of resources are created to support that school in their campaigning work. And schools can put together action plans. They might choose to focus on one of our badges, which tackles a particular type of bullying behaviour, and that can help them structure their ideas and their work to make an impact in their school. And we're pretty proud in the last year before the pandemic, and kind of our ambition for years going forward is actually to train 10,000 anti-bullying ambassadors a year. Anyone who recognises the Royal Albert Hall, if you picture that whole space twice over filled with ambassadors, that's how many young people we're reaching a year. And those young people, you know, then are multiplying their impact, going in and spreading their anti-bullying message and sharing their knowledge of anti-bullying and kind of UPSTANDER behaviour. Okay, so we kind of said what we hope to achieve, what kind of evidence do we have for that. We obviously run kind of surveys and use other kind of evaluation tools to get insight into our programs. And as you said, Paul, it really starts with kind of building this knowledge base of young people's understanding of different types of bullying behaviour, how to kind of recognise it, both online and in schools. And we actually found that basically every single anti-bullying ambassador after the programme, 97%, said that they know how to kind of support someone, they know how to spot bullying behaviour when it's happening online, and they feel confident that they can help make their school a kinder place. And that's compared to kind of more like 70, 80% before the training. And what's really nice to see as well is that 3 months later, kind of when our aftercare team are doing their work and continuing those check-ins, those kind of levels of confidence in their knowledge and their peer support skills maintains kind of a high level and stays at higher than their baseline rate. It's really nice to see sort of 10 to sort of 20% increases over time. And great to see so many ambassadors feeling so confident. Yeah. So being an upstander doesn't just kind of involve, in our opinion, the sort of self-reported feelings and confidence in young people. We obviously want to see that translated into the behaviours that they take in schools. So we define kind of various upstander behaviours, such as telling a member of staff if they see and witness bullying behaviour, standing up against bullying behaviour, maybe the perpetrator. We want them to kind of intervene, as Paul said, in a safe way. Many of our ambassadors see kind of that peer support helping, listening, providing a kind of validating listening ear, and also kind of encouraging anyone who is experiencing to self-report it themselves and make sure something can kind of be dealt with. And what's really great to see is that kind of before the training, we're sort of seeing a lot of upstanding behaviour kind of relatively. Many of our young people are very motivated already when they come to the training, but we still see, again, sort of at least 10% increases in the amount of upstander behaviour that is happening 3 months after training. So really nice to see young people not just kind of sitting there comfortably feeling confident, but actually putting it into action as well. So of course, it's not obviously just the individual ambassadors who benefit. We, as Paul mentioned, kind of support the schools through their campaigns long term. And I talked about the badges, and this really helps kind of schools target their approach. And we actually had an external evaluation conducted last year by a think tank called Demos, which found that the program's kind of adaptability was a real strength to the success of the program in schools. So that's kind of a main reason why we have these badges. Schools can really reflect on what issues are facing their communities. For example, there may be a particular spike in racist bullying behaviour in their schools. Young people may be experiencing low well-being or kind of issues surrounding kind of their wellness. There might be a problem with online safety. As we know, bullying behaviour often starts in schools but can transfer online. Or they may be really wanting to kind of embed their schools within their local communities and share that message with parents or other settings. So with these, young people can really tackle the issues that are important to them. Paul, from your perspective, from the training and the aftercare kind of support, what do you think are those key contributing factors that help us see such an improvement in schools' culture?
Sure, absolutely. So I think when the students take part in the training, they're able to speak frankly amongst one another within either their peer group or with the adults that are present in the session. It has been my observation across the team that young people can connect with others who share their personal experiences. That's a big driving factor of our training. I feel this encourages young people to not feel their experiences are isolated. They're not alone. They aren't the only person who's experiencing within their world. It's actually a wider issue. So by having a clear focus on clear action points in campaigning and spreading the responsibility across a whole team of those anti-bullying ambassadors, this further increases their confidence in their abilities that they actually already possess, but we're just nurturing and helping them to realise what they actually already have. The aftercare badge reward scheme is fantastic. We're very proud of it at the Down Award, as it really gives a clear focus for the young people with something tangible to achieve from the work that they are doing, the social action campaign initiatives that they get rewarded for. So even from that gives them a clear vision of the longer term impact on behaviour change within their schools by recognising those 4 key areas. I think with these 4 key areas and these badges is fantastic because it also strengthens when Ofsted come into schools. They regularly report back from our engaged schools, say how fantastic it is to see these things in action, things that are important to young people, but create a more positive culture within the school as well.
Great. So yeah, as you said, Paul, obviously the youth-led nature of the programme is hugely critical to the success of the programme, but we also obviously recognise that we couldn't do it without the staff leads who support the young people through their work. So we offer specific training for staff as well, and through that kind of targeted session and online resources that teachers can kind of use, we've found huge kind of increases in staff feeling confident to support those students, their ambassadors, to take that peer-led approach. We found that staff feel more confident around their legal rights and responsibilities, and ultimately staff are feeling better equipped to deal with bullying behaviour. And again, in that external evaluation, that cooperation between the kind of staff and the students is really, really key to embedding that kind of approach within the school and making it a success. Okay, so to wrap up, the Dan Awards kind of anti-bullying ambassador program is a really kind of practical example of where the research on bullying behaviour and the kind of models of peer-to-peer interactions really translated into kind of action-led support for young people within their schools. So yeah, Paul, are there any kind of key learnings that you'd like to share with other anti-bullying practitioners or researchers?
Absolutely. I think through our campaigns, our training, our fantastic impact team as well, we really recognise real tangible outcomes from the training, but a few things to kind of recommend. So the first thing is something we say within our training: promoting a youth-led approach to campaign work is key to a school success. Empowering the young people makes effective change. Second one, I'd probably say ensuring a whole school approach is taken with buy-in from all that provides a foundation for their success. So making sure that you involve everyone in the areas of work that are focused on, so you create more of a movement. It's all about moving forwards. And I think the third point I'd probably come up with is about developing a child-friendly anti-bullying policy, a very key thing for us, as this gives a really strong youth voice to the approach. Creating multiple accessible versions as well ensures we're all familiar with it. So it could include videos, full versions of the policy, child-friendly versions for different age ranges, school charters. And I think for us, this really sort of demonstrates how you can make this approach really inclusive, because part of the underpinning principles from our training is that everybody has equal voice in contributing towards that. And some of the impact we've done through our various training programs has been involving young people who are maybe neurodivergent, special educational needs, young people from different racial backgrounds, people that have differing gender identities, sexual orientations, and having an equal voice in moving that forward as well.
So if we have time for one more minute, we're just going to share a quick video from one of our anti-bullying ambassadors to show the impact that the programme has had on their lives.
Hi, my name's Kieran and this is my story. I was bullied in primary school. It put me down a spiral of depression, and I used to think that I was the problem. I couldn't figure out in my head it had to be me. It puts you on little things like not even noticing your breath or the density of it, because it's that deep that it takes over your life. That's why I became an ambassador. It sort of got me to realise that I am weak, and if they do have a problem with it, then okay, fair enough. But I should not ever feel like I'm the problem. So that's why I wanted to make that impact through people to know that they're okay and that I'm here to support them no matter what. That's what Darren wants to do, because I have been given a job.
Oh, an amazing young person. I remember training Kieran all the way back in 2015. So all that change he's made. Very, very proud of him indeed. Susanna.
Amazing. That's everything from us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.